Okay, welcome back to today's show. Last episode we talked about introduction to tuning. It was a very kind of a basic video, a very slightly basic video. So today we're going to do a process of tuning. That's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start it off as a storyline. I've just bought a car, probably a turbocharged or a supercharged car.
Yeah.
And I've come to you. So it's a stock car from factory. No modifications, nothing.
Yes.
How would you advise someone on choosing a tune?
Okay, so normally for most of our customers, we advise that you have some kind of power goal in mind. So you say, I'd like to run around 300 horsepower on this car.
Yeah.
Or sometimes you might be tuning for efficiency, more better fuel economy or something like that.
Yeah.
So you have that goal in mind. And then when you come to us, we can advise how you'll attain that goal.
Yeah.
So let's say you came to us with a certain car that can do 400 horsepower, 500 horsepower, but you just say, look, my power goal is 350 horsepower.
Yeah.
So I will advise that you do a set of things that will get you to that goal.
Yeah.
And the good thing is, with most guys, they will be more satisfied when they attain the goal that they started with in their mind, as opposed to just doing something, open-ended. Yeah.
Now, when I've come to you, and there are many different tune levels: stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So,
yes.
What are the different requirements of the different stages?
Yes.
So,
okay. So the name stage 1, stage 2, it's just to make it simple and easy for people to understand.
Yeah.
So basically, a stage 1 car is a stock car with no modifications in terms of hardware.
Yeah.
So it's just completely in its basic form from the factory.
From factory.
Yeah. And then we put a tune, and then we call that stage 1.
Yeah.
Stage 2 car normally means it has at least a high flow exhaust or a downpipe and a free flowing air intake.
Yeah.
So with the stage 1 and stage 2 cars, it's, let's say, the entry level, which most guys will be comfortable with.
Yeah.
And then we have stage 3, where you have to change a bit more items in the car, like the turbo, or your supercharger pulleys, or if it's a naturally aspirated car, you might have to fit a supercharger kit or a turbo kit on it. Yeah.
So, like on the stage 2 part, when you mentioned high flow exhaust.
Yes.
We normally see many people going to different exhaust shops to decut the car.
Yes.
Does that qualify as a high flow exhaust, or it's better if you buy a premium downpipe from a reputable place?
Correct. So most guys, especially diesel guys, like to remove the diesel particulate filter, the DPF.
Yeah.
And some guys with old cars will also remove the catalytic converter in the exhaust to make it flow better. Yeah. Because after some time it can clog.
Yeah.
And just replacing it with a through pipe is not the best way because it kind of alters the sound of the car.
Yeah.
So if you're particular about your exhaust note, you might not like that as such.
Yeah.
So I always recommend you get a reputable company who make a high flow downpipe with a sports cut. Now the cut is basically like a cleaning mechanism for your exhaust so that you're not polluting the environment, which also is a good thing. Yeah.
So for the guys who are very particular about the environment,
so
it's better they get a sport cut.
Sports cut, yes. So in sports cut, you just find that the number of cells in the catalyst is more spaced out. Yeah. So the cells are fewer and more spaced out, so it flows a bit better than a stock box, which is really congested and kind of chokes the engine once you tune up the power. And
on the intake side, I normally see guys, there's always more of a discussion with a cold air intake.
Yes.
The suggestion is, yes, you've put a cold air intake, but it's just sucking hot air from the engine.
Yeah, so with cold air intakes, we find very minimal gains normally, and depending on the brand, if it didn't come with a heat shield, you might end up actually sucking in hot air from the engine bay. So for most people, I think the reason they put cold air intakes is for the sound, because it has a nice whoosh kind of sound to it. When you're driving, it sounds really cool. And if you have a supercharged vehicle, you can also hear the whining of the supercharger. So it sounds amazing. But really, in terms of power, it nets you minimal gains. Although, for just the basic reason that it eliminates the need to keep replacing your air filter every now and then.
Yeah, because you just wash it.
Yes, you just wash it and put it back. So it's a good mode to do either way.
Then, about also tuning, guys use meth injection.
Yes.
It's to do with colder air, denser air, more power.
Yes.
So how do guys go about meth injection?
Okay. So maybe I should take it all the way back to how a combustion engine works. So you find a lot of engines nowadays are basically four-stroke combustion engines. So by four-stroke, I mean it has four strokes of the piston in the cylinder.
There is
so the first one is the induction intake, and then the second stroke going up is compression, and then combustion. The piston goes back down,
exhaust.
And then the exhaust valves open, and the fourth stroke is the exhaust cycle. So when you have direct injection vehicles, you find the injectors are also inside the cylinder. So what happens is, over time, there's a bit of carbon buildup
on top of
the valves. Yeah. So one thing meth injection helps, because the meth is injected normally inside the intake pipe. Or from the intercooler outlet into the charge pipe going into the throttle body. So that meth helps to clean the valves. And the reason we also mix the meth with water is because the water has a high capacity to absorb the heat from the air. So what the meth injection does as well is to reduce the intake temps drastically. So it maintains a very low intake temperature, and it also helps in enriching the fuel so that it's more knock resistance. So with meth, you get a lot of benefits. You get the clean valves, you get the increased octane. So it means you can run higher timing, you can run more aggressive compression, things like that. And it also helps to cool the charged air. So you get a very efficient engine. And you have to think of an engine actually as an air pump. So while it's doing all the intake and exhaust and combustion, so it's taking in air and pushing it out through the exhaust. So the more air you can compact into the engine, and the more efficient the flow of air is going into the engine and coming out, the better performance you get.
When you talked about direct injection, there's also indirect injection. It's called indirect injection?
Not really, it's called port injection.
Port injection. So with port injection is whereby the fuel injector,
it's inside it's just not inside the cylinder, but just after the throttle body in the intake manifold. So the air from the throttle body mixes with the fuel outside of the cylinder, and then when the valve opens, the air and fuel go into the chamber. But with a direct injection engine, when the intake valve open, only air goes in, and then the timing and depending on also the sensors, like the mass airflow sensor, it will determine how much fuel to inject.
So now with port injection, I'm assuming now with port injection, there won't be the benefit of meth whereby it cleans the valves, because fuel has cleaning properties.
Correct. Yes.
So you may find it cleans also the top of the valves.
Yes, it cleans the top of the valve. So if you're using port injection, normally the meth will benefit you in the other ways for cooling the charged air, and also increasing the octane level of the fuel.
Yeah.
But you don't necessarily benefit from the cleaning effect of the valves because the fuel is already doing that.
Okay. What about other supporting modes
All right.
that one might do?
Yes. So when you start tuning, and you want to know if the tune is working, right?
Yeah.
So you have to keep monitoring all these kind of sensors.
Yeah.
The most important sensors we normally use for tuning are the Lambda Sensors or air fuel ratio sensor, which is found in the exhaust. So this sensor helps us to determine if the air and fuel mixture is in the right ratio for optimal power. So there's in Lambda it's something like 0.882, or in AFR it's something like 12.5, and then it's
to do this stoichiometric.
Yes, it's so basically Lambda is the ratio of fuel to air, and AFR is the ratio of air to fuel. That it's like an inverse. So 12.5 is like the 14.7 air to fuel ratio is stoic, which means it's the right amount for combustion. Yes, but in an engine you want to be a bit rich, so it means you want a bit more fuel to make power and also to be a bit safe. Yes, and now as the engine is being ramped up to a higher RPM, you can enrich the mixture also to help you manage the exhaust temperatures. So it's a way we play around with that sensor. Now, okay, the reason I'm talking about the sensors, so you have the Lambda sensor, and in the intake you have the mass airflow sensor. And then you have other sensors like temperature sensors, boost sensors, and so on. So when we start tuning, normally some cars will not have these sensors. So it means you install them yourself. So, or you might have a sensor that does not give you the specific reading. If it's 0.81 or 82, it will just tell you rich or lean. So we call that a narrow band sensor, which is you can't use that for tuning. So you have to get a wide band sensor. So some of those things I can say are the basic supporting modes, and then depending on the engine, now you have to start looking what are the weak points. So normally with turbo cars, you'll install an intercooler so that your charge temperatures, when the air comes from the turbo, it kind of warms up a bit. So
About the warming of air.
Yes.
Many guys don't understand why you install a bigger intercooler.
Yeah.
With turbocharged cars, supercharged cars, compressed air gets quite hot.
Yes, it does.
And hot air is less dense, less power.
Correct.
So that's why intercoolers.
Yes, so your car will most likely come with an intercooler, but in most cases you find it's a very small unit which won't support the additional power from what the car came with. So it's the first thing we normally replace. So that's a good supporting mode to have. And depending also on the engine, some pipes might be weak. So we had a case with the BMW where the throttle body charge pipe just exploded, and I mean we had to fix it with something more strong. So we can call that a supporting mode. Normally it's something known because as guys use the car, they'll know the weak points, and some pipes could be too narrow or squished, so they kind of limit the power. Yes, so you don't want those restrictions. So you remove anything that is restricting the engine from making peak power. Then you can put colder spark plugs. That.
What do you mean when you say colder spark plugs?
Oh, that's a good question. So each engine has a rating for the plug it's supposed to use. So when you start tuning, adding boost and so on, the pressure and temperatures inside the engine can get quite hot, extreme. So if you have a stock plug and a very highly modified car, you'll get what you call detonation, because the spark will get so hot that it will kind of ignite the fuel. Yes, before the right time. So you want a colder plug which is more resistant to the heat, so that it doesn't have that effect. Yeah.
So once we've done all these varieties of tunes, you're choosing your mods.
Yes.
Not tuning. Dynos.
Yes.
Dynos are pretty. It's a pretty sensitive topic.
Yeah. So we like to think of dynos personally as a tuning tool. Okay. So the reason I say that is because every dyno is different. You have different type of dynos. You have your dyno jets, you have your Mustang dynos, you have hub dynos, and they all read differently. Even for the same car, two different dynos will read differently. And in fact, the same dyno will read differently on different days, depending on the temperature or whatever the case may be, okay, the fuel you're using on that day. So the best way to look at the dyno is as a tuning tool. So by that I mean, when you have a stock car, you take it to your dyno and you have your base power. So let's say for GTI you'll be running around 180 wheel horsepower stock. So again, the dyno measures the power on the wheels, which means you've lost a bit of the power from the engine due to the drivetrain, the transmission and the axles, drive shafts and all that, and the diffs. So for a front wheel drive car like VW Golf, you lose less power because it's front wheel driven, which means there's not much drivetrain loss. But now in a rear wheel drive car like this BMW here, you find because of all that drivetrain loss, you might end up you end up losing maybe 15% of the power, whereas a front wheel drive car will lose around 10% of the power from the engine. So when the dyno measures the wheel horsepower, it's actually very accurate because that's the power that's actually being put on the ground. When you're driving, no matter how much power the engine is making, what is important is yes. So once you have your base, you know, and for most manufacturers, especially German manufacturers, we find they kind of let's say underestimate the power. So when they quote a vehicle to do 200 horsepower, if you measure it, you might find it's something like 210. Yeah, it's always a bit lower for many different reasons. I mean, the same car should have at least, basically, minimum 200 horsepower in any condition. That's how they think of it.
Someone might go to a different dyno and they get unexpected results.
Of course.
It's quite pissed off.
Yes, so a lot of owners sometimes get surprised that, you know, the power the car came with is actually more than what was quoted. So you do that first dyno to get the base, and then now when you start tuning, you have to go back to the same dyno in order to see how much performance improvement you've gotten. So we are basically using the dyno purely as a tuning tool to see how much we've gained. So whether I dynoed the first time and I only got 150 horsepower, then the second time I got 200 horsepower, that's sufficient for me to know I've gained this amount. So it's not a very, like you say, it's a sensitive topic.
Because, you know, there is always the discussion that, yes, the company says I'll get 50 horsepower.
Yeah.
One customer might go, dyno the car and be like, me, I only got 20.
Yeah.
You got 30.
Mm-hmm.
There are many different parameters.
Yes.
Maybe the fuel you're using is much better.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe your plugs were fouled.
Yes.
You know, there are always very many different aspects.
Correct.
Now, when you're reading the dyno chart, there's always the horsepower level and there's a torque reading.
Correct.
Maybe you could explain a little bit about the different readings.
Okay. So the easiest way I can simplify it is torque is what gets you going. So it's the turning force. All right. Now in a more technical way, when the piston is moving up and down, it's turning the crankshaft. So the torque is actually a measure of force applied at a distance. So it's the force of the piston on the crankshaft, and the distance is
So the stroke.
Basically, the distance is the length of the
The piston travels. The stroke.
Yes. Okay. let's think about it like a lever.
Yeah.
Okay. So torque will be the turning motion of the lever, and it will be the force applied at the distance where your arm is. So for the piston and the crank, the piston is where the force is, and the crank is where we are turning, and the rod is now the distance we are talking about. So that is basically torque in a very technical way, but now when combined with the speed of the engine, there's a formula we can use to calculate the horsepower you're making with a certain torque amount at a specific RPM. So basically horsepower is kind of a function of torque and your engine speed. So you find diesel cars normally have a very long travel of the piston, so they have high torque. But because the piston is moving quite a long distance, they don't travel to a very high RPM. So they normally have less power, but much more torque.
I remember there was an example I was given for tractors.
Yeah.
Tractors, when you see tractors being advertised, 47 horsepower,
yes.
57 horsepower, 50 horsepower, but you always ask yourself, if a tractor cannot get stuck here, it doesn't have much power. It's
Correct.
Not quick.
Yes.
But it's got so much turning force, it can tow a truck.
Correct.
It can do that.
Yes.
But you with your car, with your 4-cylinder turbo, this, you can't really tow the same amount of cargo. What the 40 horsepower.
Correct. Yeah. So that's why I like that analogy, that torque is what gets you going, but horsepower now is what keeps you going. All right. People like to joke that power is the amount of force you will hit a wall with, and then torque is how far you will push the wall. So
now, with many of these cars, especially once you've tuned them on the road, maybe in traffic or something, you'll see someone's car, you look into the window and you'll see many different gauges.
Correct.
So you air fuel ratio gauges, boost gauges, voltimeters. Why do you guys do all that?
Yes. So it's just to keep track of what you're doing and making sure the tune is working as you expect. Because like I said, some cars will not come with the wideband air fuel ratio gauge. So especially JDM cars, you find guys will install the air fuel ratio gauge. For German cars, it comes with a wideband, so normally you won't install that gauge. But again, when you start turning up the boost, you might have something like a boost gauge to tell you how much boost the turbo is making, and it also helps you diagnose issues. So if you're not reaching the required boost, maybe you have a boost leak, and it's easy to tell. And then with built engines and more sensitive, tolerances, you have to keep track of your oil temperatures. Actually, in any car, you should keep track of your oil temperatures and so on. So those gauges really help to monitor things like those oil pressure, fuel pressure, and you can put as many sensors as you want. As many gauges as you want to read what the sensors are reporting back. But this is information that's inside the ECU anyway. So if you have a specific software, you can read directly those values, and it's a process that we call logging. So when the car is tuned, we normally connect it, instead of using all the gauges, we just connect a computer and we create a log. So we can tell as we drive, is the fuel that the ECU told the injectors to inject enough to maintain a certain air fuel ratio. So we can just check and make sure everything is running smoothly. Yeah.
And now when we come to fueling,
yes,
there's this debate of RON readings.
Correct.
V-Power is supposed to have, I don't know if it's 95 RON or something.
Yeah.
RON.
Yes.
Excellium or mobile fuel. But then people say, I prefer Excellium.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to tuning, because of the sensitivity, detonation.
So with people normally, it's sometimes a placebo effect. So someone will put V-Power and say, oh, the car is running really smoothly. But it's just a placebo effect. So for us, what matters is the logs. So we go and check. If we run the car at a specific timing on V-Power, is it trying to pull the timing out, or is it comfortable running at that fuel? So it just really depends, because even V-Power in a particular station will be different from another station. And some engines respond better to Excellium, some better to V-Power. So it is something that you have to monitor over time. But then when you really want to go all out, you get a race fuel. So a race fuel normally has a very high octane rating. The octane rating is simply a measure of how much knock resistance it has. So that's the amount of compression the fuel can be under before it detonates by itself. Okay, so race fuels can go like from 100 octane even up to 116 octane, which is quite high. And some race fuel are actually enriched with oxygen molecules. So it kind of makes more power as well. Yes, yeah.
Okay, fine. I think today we have learned quite a lot. It's been a very informative video.
Yeah.
I hope the viewers can ask questions. I hope you guys have understood something very interesting today. So, Mikhail, we're very thankful for you hosting us again.
Okay.
Us hosting you.
Yeah. You're welcome anytime.
Yeah. Guys, questions are always welcome. If you want to know anything else about tuning, it's going to be a long series of tuning. So there's still going to be a part 3, there's going to be a part 4. Yeah. So thanks.
Thank you.